Cinderella, a story of kindness and hope. Cinderella was a young girl who lived once in a quiet little town. She was sensitive, soft, and would never fail to offer assistance to others. But her life was not easy. Her father had also passed away when she was at a tender age, and she was with her stepmother and her two stepsisters. Her stepmother was an arrogant and egocentric woman. She was fond of her own daughters, and she did not care about Cinderella. Cinderella was obliged to do all the work in the house daily. She was also cleaning up the floors, washing the dishes, cooking the meals, and even doing the care of the garden. Her stepsisters, in their turn, wasted their time putting on costumes and gazing at mirrors. Cinderella never complained in spite of her great work. She never swore or avoided using a smile on her face. As she would say to herself, no matter how night it will be, the morning will always come. The royal invitation. One day, the king of the country declared a grand ball in the palace. The prince was the grown-up man, and time had come to make a choice of a bride to him. All young ladies in the kingdom were invited. The stepsisters of Cinderella were happy. They shouted with wild excitement, "We must go to the ball! Perhaps the prince will one of us." They have Cinderella ironing their gowns, polishing their shoes and hair, etc. "Can I also go to the ball?" Cinderella asked softly. Her stepmother was cruelly laughing. "You go to the ball? You do not wear a dress or shoes or jewels. Go home and get your job by." Cinderella was lying down and did not protest. She saw how her step-parents and stepsisters went to the palace, their carriage aglow in the night. After the house fell silent, Cinderella took her seat before the fireplace and wept. The fairy godmother. Then, all at once, a warm light filled out the room. An elderly lady with a blushing countenance came. She was wearing a silver dress and holding a wand. "Cry not, kid! Do not cry," she said. "I am your fairy godmother. You are a fine girl, and you make an appearance at the ball tonight." The fairy godmother transformed a pumpkin into a golden carriage with the movement of her wand. After that, she turned 6 little mice into pretty white horses. She touched the antique clothes of Cinderella, and they changed into a glittering silver blue gown. A pair of glittering glass slippers had been put on her feet. The eyes of Cinderella were open with the surprise. "Oh, it's so beautiful! Thank you," she said happily. The fairy godmother smiled and gave a warning. "You see, I will cease to have my magic at midnight. You have to come before the clock strikes 12. Cinderella was so magical, she promised, and went to the palace in her magic carriage, the grand ball. It was a light, full of music and laughter palace. There were gorgeous women and fine gentlemen crowding the hall of grandeur. But as Cinderella walked in, everybody looked at her. Her dress shone as brightly as the stars, and her smile was as white as the moonlight. The prince approached her more directly. "May I have this dance?" he asked politely. Cinderella said yes, and they danced beautifully over the floor. The prince had never seen such a mild and a benign man. The entire evening he talked to her and forgot everybody. Cinderella felt so glad that she did not remember so much about the time. But all of a sudden, the palace clock struck 12. "Dong! Dong! Dong! It was midnight!" "Oh no!" cried Cinderella. She hastened forth out of the palace. On her hurry, one of her glass slippers slipped off her foot and remained on the steps of the palace. She didn't stop to pick it up. She just arrived at her carriage when the final bell sounded and all was restored. The golden carriage was turned to a pumpkin, the horses to mice, and her gown to her former clothes. But the prince was still holding her slipper, the hunt of the unknown woman. The following morning, the prince said, "I will marry her whose foot will fit upon this glass slipper." The slipper was transported around the houses by his servants. On arriving at the house of Cinderella, her stepsisters attempted to put their feet into the shoes, but the slipper was so small. Then Cinderella said, "May I make an attempt?" Her stepmother laughed. "You don't waste their time." But the servant replied and told him that the prince had ordered that all young women should attempt. Cinderella sat up and wiggled her foot into the slipper, and to the amazement of everybody, all to his hands. Just then, her fairy godmother made another appearance and changed the clothes of Cinderella into an equal beautiful dress as the one she wore to the ball. The prince arrived on the spot and uttered, with a jubilation of joy, "You are the one! Will you marry me?" Cinderella smiled and shook her head. Happily ever after, Cinderella did not forgive her stepmother or stepsisters who had mistreated her. She became the wife of the prince, and they happily lived there in the palace. However, more than money and beauty, Cinderella had with her the lesson of benevolence and forbearance and hope. Each time people used to inquire of her the key to her happiness, she used to reply by saying, "Be nice, even when life is difficult. The things are bound to turn out fine."